Let me introduce Lena, who will start this conference for us. Heart is beating, especially warmly for Lena. We have a very close relationship. Lena and I met a year ago. I received a message from our mutual friend of ours that there is this Gestalt wonderful person from the Minsk Institute, one of the founders of the Minsk Institute, who has been working in the human rights area for years. Unfortunately, she's persecuted, and she's been persecuted in her own country and had to leave to survive. When we met in Georgia. We started talking online about some collaboration, and that has happened. I'm very happy because Lena, with her sons, has moved from August to Poland, to Łódź. She has her new home with not too long roots, but still it's a home, and we work and cooperate on this within this Łódź School of Gestalt. Lena is the drive force of this conference, the main originator. She's also a Gestalt therapist. She's a supervisor, very actively working for the benefit of human rights. And here in Poland, in Łódź, she creates a Russian language-speaking community of Gestalt practitioners. She organizes festivals devoted to Gestalt to create a network of connections among people who are migrants and who would like to be in touch with one another and to create their lives, their new lives here in Poland. So, Lena, the floor is yours.
Спасибо большое за такое представление, Каролина.
Thank you, Karolina, very much for
Уважаемые коллеги,
a warm introduction, so dear friends.
Сегодня для меня значимое событие в моей мигрантской жизни.
It's an important event in my life as a migrant.
И как часто мы в своих профессиональных кругах себя
as we
называем
often refer to
бродяжнической
ourselves in our
карьере.
professional circles, we are in the careers of wayfarers, vagabonds.
События в жизни каждого человека происходят
Events
по-разному,
in
своим
each
уникальным
person's
образом,
life happen differently in their own unique way.
как и события в жизни стран.
The same is true of events in the life of countries.
Первую часть своей профессиональной карьеры я работала в сфере оказания
At the start of
помощи
my career,
социально
I
уязвимым
worked in the
группам,
area of providing assistance to
людям,
socially
живущим
vulnerable
с ВИЧ,
groups,
наркозависимым,
living
осужденным,
with
освободившимся.
HIV, drug addicts, convicts, and those released from prisons.
И там, и тогда было много фокуса на уязвимости.
There and then,
Приданию социальной справедливости через компенсаторную функцию, своеобразное уравнивание.
A compensatory function, a kind of compensation or leveling.
Сейчас, будучи гештальт-терапевтом, практикующим гештальт-подход как философию в жизни,
practicing the Gestalt approach as a life philosophy,
для меня важен другой ракурс, исследование феноменов, какие бы они ни были, справедливыми или нет. Понимание через осознавание, что же такое происходит, дает само по себе точку опоры.
Awareness of what is actually going on gives a point of reference.
Часто не требуют дополнительных действий.
Often without having to undertake additional activities.
По моим наблюдениям, ощущение себя как достойного человека,
my observations
существом,
show
обладающим человеческим
that perceiving oneself as a human being of value,
является самым опорным в процессе восстановления.
provides the most important support in the reconstruction, regrowing
В ситуациях
process.
насилия и диктатуры именно достоинство претерпевает наибольшую травму.
In situations of violence and dictatorship, it is above all dignity that experiences the greatest trauma.
Именно через поддержку и восстановление
It is by
пораненного
supporting
достоинства
and restoring
происходит
wounded
феноменологическое
dignity that
исцеление.
phenomenological healing takes place.
Другими словами, можно назвать
In other
реабилитация,
words, we
выздоровление.
can call it rehabilitation,
Более простыми
recovery,
словами, человеку становится
or
легче
to
жить
put
свою жизнь.
simply, it is easier to live one's own life.
Ключевым аспектом в процессе восстановления является принадлежность полю, действительно питающимся
Is
ценностями
belonging to
гештальт-философии.
field, what is truly
Гештальт-подход
empowered or
к
energized by the
полноценной
values of
встрече с
Gestalt
другим
philosophy.
в ситуации насилия и
This
террора
approach, Gestalt
невозможно.
approach to fully know the other in a situation of violence and terror is impossible.
Это явно что-то другое, не про гештальт-ценности, не про встречу на границе контакта,
Because
для
then it's
которой
about
необходима
something else
безопасность
entirely. It's
граунд.
not about Gestalt values in the context of violence and terror. We are not at the boundary of contact, which requires safety
Сегодня мы
as a
живем в
basis.
ситуации, когда принадлежащее поле
Currently,
насилия преподает
we
гештальт-подход,
live in a
позиционирует себя
situation
как
where the
гештальт-терапевт и
field of
транслирует то, что, по сути,
violence
не может
are
быть
teaching the Gestalt
гештальт-терапией.
approach, positioning themselves as Gestalt therapists and passing on what may not actually be Gestalt therapy.
Таким образом, наше
This way,
профессиональное поле наполняется новыми
our
смыслами,
professional
часто
field is
усиливающими
filled with new
ощущение
meanings that
неопределенности,
often reinforce
ситуации
the sense
повышенной
of lack of
небезопасности,
definition in a situation of heightened insecurity, and thus
блокирующие появление нечто
block
нового.
the emergence of something new.
Я из Беларуси, в настоящее
I
время
am
вынуждена
originally
живу в
from
Польше.
Belarus. At the moment, I live
Последние
in
несколько
Poland
лет
not
мне
of
приходилось много работать с
my own
людьми,
free choice.
пострадавшими от
Over the
насилия на
past
разных
few
уровнях.
years, I've often worked with people affected by violence at different levels.
Как правило, люди приходили в терапию
As a
в
rule,
стыде
people
за то, что с ними, с их близкими
used to come to
такое
therapy
произошло.
and come to therapy
Они
and are
находились в
ashamed of
тюрьме,
what
их
happened
уволили
to
с
them, to their
работы,
loved
с ними
ones,
жестко обошлись.
that they are in prison, that they were fired from their jobs, that they were treated harshly or unjustly.
Для меня, как терапевта, сложно забыть
It is
те
difficult for
моменты
me as
и
a therapist to
лица
forget
клиентов и
the
их
faces of
телесные реакции,
clients and
когда в
their
какой-то момент терапии
bodily
у меня
reactions when, at
рождались
some point in
фразы
therapy,
«Я горжусь твоим братом»,
words were uttered.
«Я горжусь
I am
тобой, что ты
proud
такая
of your
сестра
brother.
для
I am
него».
proud of you for being such a sister to him.
Я участвовала как слушатель в судебных
I
заседаниях
have
по делам моих клиентов,
only participated as a
где все,
bystander
что я могла
in clients'
сделать,
court
только
hearings, where
присутствовать
all
и
I could
послать
do
руками
was
сердечко
be
как
there
знак принятия и
and
поддержки.
send out a heart sign as a sign of acceptance and support.
Для меня это тоже
For
про
me,
поддержку человеческого достоинства моего клиента.
it's also about supporting the human dignity of my client.
Даже в клетке он или
Even
она
when
остается для меня человеком.
they are in a cage,
И
they
это
still
важные
remain
моменты, в том
human to
числе
me.
наших терапевтических отношений.
Those moments are also very important in our therapeutic
Как и
relationship.
последующие после суда переписки.
Just like the correspondence occurring after the court hearing.
Сложно представить себе лет 5 назад или и
It
больше,
was difficult
что моя
to
терапевтическая практика
imagine
приобретет
some
такие
5
формы.
years ago that my therapeutic practice would assume such form.
Сегодня психотерапевтический сеттинг приобретает
Today,
новые формы,
the
следует за
psychotherapeutic setting is
феноменами
taking on
поля.
new forms, following the phenomena from the field.
И эта конференция своеобразный
This
апдейт
conference
возможных форм
is a kind of
терапевтического контакта,
update of
которые
possible
в большей
forms of
степени
therapeutic contact
соответствуют требованиям
that
здесь и
better
сейчас.
meet the requirements of the here and now principle.
У нас будет 2 дня интересных, разнообразных, полных разных лекций, много серьезного материала, теоретического и практического.
Interesting lectures, a lot of serious theoretical, but also practical material.
Моя задача сейчас задать атмосферную рамку этому процессу, привнести определенной степени жизненности в той теории, которую мы будем обсуждать позже. Поэтому в лучших традициях гештальт-подхода в качестве гештальт-шеринга хочу поделиться несколькими своими наблюдениями, даже не с клиентской практики и работы с клиентами, а больше из событий своего последнего года жизни как гештальт-терапевта в миграции.
Share you about the struggles from my own life. I am one of the thousands of colleagues in migration.
Как одной из тысяч, которые проживают мои коллеги в вынужденной миграции по всему.
I am one of the many thousands of colleagues in forced migration around the world.
Я покажу несколько фото, которые дают некоторую ретроспективу и описание феноменов, возможно, не ключевых и не самых ярких, но одних из огромного множества моментов, встречающихся на пути человека, ищущего. Гештальт-бродяги.
They show some of the moments that we encounter. We are in the path of searching. We are Gestalt drifters or vagabonds.
В жизни многих белорусов и украинцев наверняка список этих стран можно продолжить. Нет, сейчас главное. В течение последних лет возникает момент, когда оставаться в стране становится невыносимым и хочется бежать из этого города.
Has come a point where staying in a country becomes unbearable and you want to escape that field.
Из поля, которое полно невыносимого. И так случилось и со мной. Наступил тот момент, когда оставаться уже было невыносимо. Полдня на сборы и долгий путь никуда.
The situation was no longer bearable, and I had to set out for a long journey to nowhere.
Ты не понимаешь, что происходит, но какая-то внутренняя сила тебя толкает вперед, основанная в большей степени на инстинкте самосохранения, неизвестность.
It's all based more on self-preservation instinct, before the force carries you into the unknown.
Это фото из гостиницы, в которой я проснулась после долгого и спешного пути.
Hotel where I woke up
из страны, которую я очень люблю и в которой я хочу жить.
Running from a country I love very much and where I would love to live.
Пути из дома, который для меня перестал быть
безопасным. The roads that lead away from home, it was no longer a safer place for me.
Это первое попавшееся после прохождения границы гостиницы в пограничной зоне Латвии.
I came across after crossing
с большим количеством фото спортсменов на стенах и различных спортивных медалей.
Photos of athletes and medals on the walls.
И для меня тогда, и особенно сейчас, с очень глубоким названием «Рестарт».
The name of the hotel was very insightful, Restart.
В тот момент было сильное ощущение того, что дальше катастрофически по-новому.
No matter what would come would be catastrophically new.
Только совсем непонятно как.
Only it was not at all clear as to how.
Это фото из Вильнюса, из Литвы, где я пробовала пожить какое-то время, но так и не нашла ничего похожего на дом. Ни в атмосфере города, ни в языке, ни в людях.
Either in the atmosphere of the city, the language, or the people.
Это фото автовокзала в Вильнюсе.
The photo was taken at the bus station in Vilnius.
Место, которое мне в деталях описывали клиенты, и в этот момент, когда я там была, в момент ожидания, когда мне придут цены из Беларуси,
described in so many details, waiting for my son from Belarus.
Вдруг вспомнились все эти клиентские истории
And
об этом
suddenly,
месте.
all these stories of my clients came back to me.
Я стояла на вокзале, автобуса не было, все казалось чужим, непонятным, совершенно незнакомым.
At the station, there was no bus. Everything seemed foreign and completely incomprehensible to me.
И я подумала, какое количество белорусов вот так стоят на месте в ожидании передачки, весточки или близких людей оттуда, из дома.
Like this, waiting for a package, news, or loved ones from home.
Я пыталась спросить, где автобус, было тревожно,
I
меня
tried
отправляли туда,
to
где его
find
не
out
было.
where the bus
И
was. I felt anxious.
какой-то безысходности хотелось
where it was not.
быть на Луну.
There was a station to nowhere. I wanted
Слезы
to
текли, вспоминались
cry in
опять
despair.
истории клиентов
Tears
об
were
этих
flowing.
чувствах, когда
I
до дома
recalled
пару сотен
customer
километров,
stories
а ты вот так
about
вот
this
стоишь посреди
place
чужого
and
вокзала
what
в
they
чужой
felt.
стране и
They were
ждешь.
several hundred kilometers from home, standing in the middle of nowhere and saying to yourself, at least so.
Ждешь, говоря про себя, хорошо,
You're
что...
waiting and you're thinking, okay, at least this is how it is.
Вот это фото уже из Грузии, где мне повстречались невероятные коллеги со всех окрестных стран и практикующие.
This photo is from Georgia, where I met amazing colleagues
практикующих совершенно разные
countries and
подходы, разные
practitioners
психотерапевтические модальности.
of
Были коллеги
many
из
different
Украины,
psychotherapeutic
Беларуси,
modalities. We
России.
had colleagues from Ukraine, Belarus, Russia there.
Там мне задавали много вопросов, говорили на всех трех языках
We
одновременно, на всех
spoke all
10
three
и
languages at
более
once.
языках разных
We didn't speak
модальностей.
much, and we had all these different languages of modalities
И в
as
этом
well.
каком-то хаосе был своеообразный порядок,
And
который
it was
давал
a sort of chaos,
сильную
but amidst
точку
this
опоры.
chaos, there was some order
У всех были
that
похожие
gave
истории.
a sense of basis, because we all had similar
Про
stories to
дом,
share,
про невозможность, про
talking about
поиски
our
энергии для новой
pain
жизни.
at home, about inability, about searching for energy for a new life.
Я жила в Батуми, город, который
I
вытянут
lived
вдоль
in
моря
Batumi
с
there, then a
длинной широкой
city
набережной.
stretching along the sea coast with a very broad, wide promenade.
Если пройтись по ней, то своих
As you
бродяг
stroll
можно было узнать
along it,
издалека по
you
каким-то
can
своим
easily
ориентирам.
recognize your own vagabonds. You have this internal landmark or point of reference.
Грузия подарила мне ощущение того,
Georgia
что все-таки можно быть вместе.
Gifted me with a sense that we can still be together.
Несмотря ни на что, встреча возможна. И это
That
ожидаемо.
after all, the meeting is possible, despite everything. And it is invigorating.
Но при таком количестве разностей и неопределенности глубина пугает.
With so many differences and uncertainties, the depth is intimidating.
А вот на этой фото мой сын Мирон, который пошел в школу в первый класс в Польше.
Miron, my son, went to first grade in Poland,
одноклассник Миша.
Together with his classmate, Misha.
Миша из Украины, он в Польше второй год.
is from Ukraine, has been in Poland for 2 years now, and left for Poland at the beginning of the war, already speaks Polish.
Поначалу Миша и Мирон дружили, но когда Миша сказал маме
Misha and Miron were friends, but when Misha told his mom at home that he has a new friend from Belarus,
сказала Мише, что Беларусь вместе с Россией против Украины.
That Belarus was on Russia's side against Ukraine.
Миша стал булить Мирона.
Misha began to bully Miron, and one day they got into a fight.
Польские дети поддерживали Мишу,
the Polish children supported Misha, understandably so.
Последние 2 года они жили в окружении
украинских флагов и слоганов в
поддержку Украины. Про Беларусь в свои 7 лет
surrounded by Ukrainian flags and slogans of support for Ukraine, and had heard little about Belarus.
Мирон пришел домой озлобленный с претензией ко мне, почему ты не сказала, что быть белорусом это...
And reproachfully said, why didn't you tell me that being a Belarusian is bad?
В этом кейсе нет виноватых. Есть много травмы и феноменов, с которыми нам, терапевтам, придется работать не просто годами, а десятилетиями.
Many phenomena that we therapists will have to work with not only for years, but for decades to come.
Сегодня я живу в Польше, где мне очень
And today, I live in Poland, where I feel different.
Работаю в теплой польской команде в Гештальт-институте.
I work in a very close, warm team at the Gestalt Institute.
И прямо сейчас тоже нахожусь в этом офисе, очень уютном.
I'm at our office right now.
Мой институт, владельцем которого я была в Минске на протяжении последних 10 лет, закрыт. Контакты прерваны.
Co-founded in Minsk and co-owned for the past 10 years, has been closed. Context severed.
Ощущение, что некая сила разом обрубила многие корни.
There is this feeling that some force has cut off numerous roots at once.
Сегодня я нахожусь в поисках дома.
Today, I am searching for a home.
Во всех этих странах и местах, где мне пришлось побывать за этот год,
But in all these countries and places and cities I've been to this year,
много людей, которые очень по-разному относились к тому, что с ними происходит.
Who have referred to what happened to them in various different ways.
Но они были с очень похожими историями, как будто они все написаны по
Everyone has very similar stories, as if they were all copied from one another.
Свой дом в своей стране.
For example, I lived all my life and built my home in my country.
Видел или видела будущее, получал радость от настоящего, но в какой-то момент вынуждена была уехать.
But at some point, I was forced, or I had to leave.
Оставив любимое место и дорогих людей, променяв это на безопасность и устойчивость, и одновременно с этим ощущением бездомности.
My favorite place and those dear to me, exchanging all that for security and stability.
На недавнем заседании Европейской ассоциации гештальт-терапевтов в Амстердаме
meeting of the EAGT
я делала презентацию проекта поддержки гештальт-терапевтов.
I delivered a presentation on a project to support Gestalt therapists in forced migration.
Участники со страданием отнеслись к описанным вызовам, и
одна из участниц задала очень
простой и прямой вопрос. Как мы можем вас поддерживать?
How can we help?
Для меня он оказался сложным отреагировать в тот момент, так как мне точно хотелось избежать ощущения себя жертвой ситуации.
Because I definitely wanted to avoid feeling like a victim of the situation.
И я с этим вопросом долго оставалась внутри.
For a long time, I stayed with this question within myself.
Сейчас я понимаю, как я хочу ответить на
Now I know how I would answer him.
Помогите нам восстановить наше человеческое достоинство.
Restore our human dignity.
Будьте рядом, слушайте
Be
нас.
there for us. Listen to us.
Резонируйте своим, делайте что-то, чего я еще не знаю, чтобы мы смогли вновь быть достойными для самих себя в профессии, в отношениях, в жизни.
Worthy of ourselves in our professions, with dignity, in relationships, in life.
Для меня эта конференция — поиск наиболее подходящих форм для этого.
For me, this conference is about finding the most appropriate forms for providing just such assistance.
Спасибо за внимание и радости нам
for your attention, and I wish you joy in our creative explorations together.
Сейчас я рада предоставить слово нашему уважаемому коллеге из Украины.
Let us give the floor to our Ukrainian colleague.
Анатолию Дитковскому.
Anatoly Ditkovsky.
Уникальный человек. Мы очень рады, что Анатолий
he is a very unique
Дитковский и моя коллега Лариса Дитковская сегодня с нами.
And Larisa Ditkovska here today with us.
Авторы уникальной книги, которая совместила в себе то многое и сложное о миграции и тех процессах психологических, которые не описаны больше нигде.
That actually take place when migration occurs, and it had never been discussed before in any publication, really. So this is a guide to the psychology of migration.
Добро пожаловать, Анатолий.
May I interrupt briefly?
The floor is yours, Anatoly.
May I interrupt briefly?
I have been with you all the time, and so far, okay. Anatoly should be joining the meeting, but something is it's not working. Okay, we have time until 10:45. Is that correct? Should we take a break? Okay, let's take a short break, and Anatoly should join us at 20 to 11. So let's sort out any technical issues we might have, so as to make sure that everybody hears everything correctly. We need to simply let Anatoly into the Zoom meeting so that he can participate from his computer, because apparently we are together in one flat, so he's connecting from another computer. Okay, Anatoly is joining us. Yes, he's been here all the time, but the point is that you need to add him as, okay, here he is.
Okay.
Здравствуйте,
Анатолий, Лариса, рада приветствовать вас здесь. Добро пожаловать и ждем вашу лекцию с нетерпением.
Okay, we're waiting for your presentation. Okay, let me give me a second to make sure that Anatoly can actually display his presentation. So yes, John is writing. He wants to say something. Okay, there was an issue with Lena's presentation. So could everyone switch to their own language? to their own channels. So if you speak Russian, then switch to Russian, and then you will be able to hear you better. John, what did you want to say?
Thank you, Tomek. I just wanted to say something to participants about inviting feedback and comments in the chat. And also just to acknowledge that we moved on from you very fast, Lena. And I wanted to appreciate what you shared and to share with you that I was moved particularly by your personal story. That really helped me get into my body. So thank you.
Спасибо большое, Джон. Я думаю, что Анатолий с Ларисой сейчас разбавит вот мою личную историю более таким
Yes, I suppose that indeed, thank you, John. Larissa and Anatoly will actually contribute some theory on top of my personal story. So welcome. I'd like to welcome all the participants, attendees of our international conference on the psychology of migration. May I now run my presentation as you are seeing it now, or do you want it full screen? Because I will be presenting this in Ukrainian, so I suppose that it is most important to hear the audio actually. Yes, precisely. I don't see this pokaz at the top because it's actually obscured by the Zoom window. Okay, leave it as it is. Okay, welcome everyone. We had the conference dedicated to psychology of migration, and thank you for inviting me and Larissa Ditkowska. Cross-cultural psychology and psychology of migration. They are taught at the Ukrainian Free University in Munich. And both these courses, each of them lasts 36 hours, while now we have only half an hour to sum it all up. So hopefully we'll make it in time. Larissa Ditkowska is a psychologist and therapist, a Gestalt therapist. I am a psychologist working in cross-cultural psychology, specializing in psychology of migration. And for over 10 years, we've been working in this field. And the outcome of our work is the publication of several monographs actually about our research. This is an encyclopedia of sorts, an encyclopedia dealing with psychology of migration, because these monographs, they deal with all aspects related to migration, starting from the motivation to leave to the actual process of leaving, to adaptation, and then to return to one's home country, if, of course, the respective migrant so wishes. Now, a couple of words about the issue of migration as such. Over recent years, there have been a lot of migrations, and we have 300 million international migrants at present. Consequently, we need to think about providing healthcare and psychological aid to all these migrants. Contemporary psychology comprises many fields, such as Gestalt psychology, personality psychology, cognitive psychology. And if we think about all these areas, well, all these areas also branch out to to further fields such as, you know, childhood psychology, psychology of the elderly, labor psychology, educational psychology, and war psychology has become popular recently. However, among all these fields of study, migration psychology seems to be lacking. And when we started our work in this area, we were really surprised. Because it turned out that there was no comprehensive approach. Psychologists from all countries were conducting the research in a manner that was not systematic. So as a result, healthcare workers didn't have any space where they could find all the answers related to migration psychology. And this is precisely why we decided to develop our encyclopedia. And I would also like to briefly address the aspect of the literature, of the literature on migration psychology. So courses in migration psychology are rather courses that are taught in the US or Canada. In Europe, well, it is slightly different. The only aspect of psychology of migration that is addressed at universities is basically intercultural communication. And in Poland, Paweł Wolski, a renowned professor, he wrote a book on the cultural frameworks of social behaviors. And since today's conference is organized by the Łódź School of Psychotherapy, and most specialists working with migrants also work in Poland. I do recommend that everyone read the book by Professor Boski. He lived and worked in the US actually in the past, and he also worked with John Berry, intercultural psychologist. And this book gives us a key to the understanding of relations between people. The psychotherapists who work with migrants, they don't work with just people who would be, well, simple and ordinary. There are so many mechanisms, there are so many tools that need to be used that have to be culture specific. But this might prove inadequate when we work with intercultural clients. And Professor Boski's book, it was first published actually a couple of years ago, but in 2023 we've had the most recent edition of this book. And it's very important actually here, not so much the theoretical part, but it's also quite important for practitioners, specialists who work in the field of mental health with migrants. And this is a very interesting work for them. And it is worth mentioning the fact that professional training is lacking within the framework of societies, of therapist societies, for people who work with intercultural migrants. And for instance, in Canada, this intercultural skill is actually obligatory for professionals working in the field of psychological aid. In the European Union, there's actually talk about a code of ethics in the respective regulations, and the intercultural aspects in this case, well, there is no information on that. So we are dealing with this situation, and this is why we accepted this challenge, and we made this risky decision to fill this gap and to publish as many as 4 scientific monographs on the psychology of migration. And this series presents in a systemic way all the psychological mechanisms and processes which involve people who had to move or decided to move to another country, and consequently to another culture. And the first of these books has already been published. You can see the cover here. 595 pages, and this first book is dedicated to the psychology of the potential migrant. And in this book, we use 477 scientific sources, and practically a psychologist reading this book or a psychotherapist reading this book will understand the psychology of a potential migrant fully, because there are so many moments described in this book which were not described in sufficient detail and highlighted in a sufficient manner before. And the second book is on social cultural adaptation in migration. And well, the number of copies, actually not the number of copies, but the number of pages was quite high. In total, these books are 800 pages long, or more or less, and this second book will be published in July. The third book is dedicated to psychological adaptation in a different country, and it will be published in 2025. What I wanted to say is that the actually the weakest in psychology of migration in terms of coverage in literature is the psychology of adaptation, and this is why I would like to say something about it now. And these books are being published in Ukrainian, but we have this idea: after these 4 books have been published, our idea is to develop one popular science publication which would be similar in size. However, it would actually contain less theory and more practice, and we would like to have it translated into different languages. And now there's the issue of financing of translation of these books, because for the time being we're actually incurring our own costs. We are doing it at our own expense, publishing these books. And we're talking about psychology of migrants, and as a matter of principle, we have this important theme. There's this important period preceding the actual moment of migration. So the time when the migrant is still in their country before leaving. And in this last book, we present migration from the point of view of psychology, that is the basic types. Or actually, we introduce migration as a liminal situation, as a liminal social situation, the motivations of migrants, psychology of choice, and many other issues. Intercultural migration is about passing from one society to another, from one culture to another, from one self to another. So actually, migration is a turning point in anyone's biography. No experiences can match migration in terms of complexity, and all this requires migrants to transform profoundly and entirely at the cognitive, affective, and behavioral level. And this leads to excessive stress in the psyche of a migrant. And what we have seen working with intercultural migrants, well, the biggest problem for them